Hi everyone, today I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on Insidious, The Red Door. This was one of the movies that I was most excited for this summer because I'm a huge fan of the Insidious franchise, especially the first two. I think are such great horror movies that used to terrify me when I was younger. And I have a lot to say about this movie, mostly in the negative side than the positive side, but we're going to be talking about it today. But before I do that, let me know down below what everybody thought of Insidious, The Red Door. So this movie is more of a sequel to Insidious 2, and it takes place many years after that movie, so the characters are in a completely different place than they were the last time we saw them. That in itself was the first thing in the movie that I actually did enjoy, because it was kind of this moment where I'm like, okay, the characters are so different than how we've seen them before, so there's a lot of room for growth, there's a lot of room for development, a lot of room for conflicts and stuff like that. And to be honest, I think this movie is one of those movies where a lot of stuff, I guess, was happening, but if you really thought about it, nothing happened at all. Like, I think everything they possibly could have jam-packed and all the really, I guess, crazy stuff that this movie thought was crazy, it was happening all the way towards the end of the movie. And even then, it wasn't really satisfying, it was sort of underwhelming, and it didn't really make much sense. I do want to say that this is actually Patrick Wilson's directorial debut. In the director chair, he actually did a pretty fine job. I think a good script is what this movie's lacking, because a lot of the times the dialogue that's being said in this movie is really bad. Like, things where I was like, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Like, I can't believe somebody wrote this and they think that this is how people actually talk. And you know, in cases like that, it makes it really awkward, because you're like, is the acting bad or is it what they're saying that's bad? And I think in this case it was that the material that they were given just wasn't the best, in my opinion. With that being said, the script itself also has a lot of trouble trying to figure out what type of movie it is, because there's a lot of stuff happening here. We have Dalton going off to college, which is, I guess, in the forefront of this movie. He's the main character of the movie, so we spend a lot of time with him in college. Then you have the stuff with Patrick Wilson's character, Josh, who he's trying to figure out what's wrong with him, why he's been off all of these years, and, you know, trying to kind of get to the bottom of this. You also have him trying to reconnect with his past with his father, which that entire plotline, in my opinion, was not necessary. I understand why they chose to go that route. I just think they didn't write it in a way where I really cared about it, or I necessarily wanted to find out what was going to happen or what was the answer. And then you also have some family drama with him and Rose Byrne's character. So there's a bunch of stuff happening here, and I think the movie just really struggled to balance itself and figure out what is the main focus of the movie, because I don't really think this movie has a main focus. And with that, it kind of just left a lot of scenes to be a little bit boring, or some stuff dragged a little bit too long. Something that I'm mostly disappointed about with this movie is that I feel like the movie doesn't bring anything original to the table at all, because Insidious, in my opinion, has always been really scary for me. Famous Darth Maul looking demon, like, that is a very Insidious thing to happen. And I will say that I think a lot of the scares in this movie felt very, like, repetitive within the Insidious franchise, but also just in horror movies in general. Like, sometimes there was, like, random creatures coming out, or, like, random little demon things. What is the point of it? Like, why are they coming out? And I feel like there was never an explanation. It just felt kind of random sometimes as well, in my opinion. It relies on things that we already know from the franchise, because the biggest conflict in this movie is that Dalton and his dad, Josh, they don't really know what happened to them in that entire year. Like, it was just kind of erased. So that does bring a lot of conflict, and it brings a lot of moments where you know as an audience member what's happening. I guess because it was one of the biggest conflicts in this movie, it felt very repetitive to me, because it's like they're just basically trying to figure out what you already know as an audience member, and I don't think they made it as interesting as I think they thought it was. There were actually some scenes where I saw some James Wan-esque type scares, and I have to give it to Patrick Wilson in the director's chair for choosing these types of moments. Like, one in particular is earlier on in the movie. I love every single time that this movie has very still shots, where basically the scare happens when a character moves their head, and then suddenly they move their head back and there's a creature behind them, or there's something behind them, or the thing that was getting closer to the screen disappears. I think those scenes work really well in this movie, because it doesn't feel forced, and I really do want to appreciate that about this movie. Like, I don't think any of the jump scares here were fake. I think they all kind of either led to something or led to a revelation. And then there's another scene later on in the movie with lights that I thought was really cool. To me, those scenes are the best, because it kind of makes you feel like you're trapped and you can't escape what you're about to see. But I think if you get really scared by Insidious movies, this one should not scare you at all, because in my opinion, like, I don't think it was really that scary. The ending was so fast, and I feel like I never really understood who the main, like, demon villain of this movie really was, because the whole time I'm like, what was the real danger here? Like, I don't really understand why they were so scared, because I feel like they would get out of things so easily, in my opinion. I think this movie was not very good, obviously, as I have been saying. I honestly think you're better off not watching it. You're really not gonna get anything from it, in my opinion. I'm not gonna say I hated my experience watching this, because I didn't. I just didn't think it was a good movie whatsoever. So those are my thoughts on Insidious: The Red Door. If you haven't given me your thoughts on this movie, let me know down below what you guys thought about it. And that about does it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll make sure to see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone!